to do a video on the issue of tzniut, of modesty in Judaism. Tell you a story first that my mother likes to tell. When she was on her honeymoon in Israel with my father, of blessed memory, in 1950, it was a very hot summer day, and she was wearing a sleeveless dress, and they went into Mea Sharim, the ultra-Orthodox neighborhood, and she got corn-cobbed by the little Hasidic boys, and there she learned about tzniut. Big signs there that say, "Daughters of Israel, beware, there's a holy community, do not wear inappropriate clothing." So where does this idea come from? Well, it started from the Haftorah, actually, my bar mitzvah, Parshat Balak, the great prophet Micah, who says, rhetorically, what does God want from you? But to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly or modestly with God. And the word there is the root of the word tzniut, which is the Jewish word for modesty. Now this is related to the idea in the Torah where Moses is considered to be the most humble guy. He uses a different word there, anav. But humility and modesty are characteristics of the religious person, as opposed to today wearing the tightest, clingiest, shortest skirts you can and flaunting your behavior in public. The religious personality is a personality of modesty and of humility. Maimonides in the Hilchot Deot, the laws of personal behavior, now usually he strives for the median in human virtue. But there, interestingly enough, he says there are two qualities to be avoided by all extremes, to the extreme, and that is anger and the opposite of humility, hubris and arrogance. And I asked my father, blessed memory, what does he mean? And he said Maimonides is saying there that not that you have to be self-effacing, because Hillel says that, who if not for myself, who will be, but in relationship to God, and in our behavior with other people, we should dress and talk and act in a modest way. So the most way in which this manifests itself today is in relationship to dress. So you know this from the Muslim community. My wife teaches world religion, and her best student last semester was a young Muslim girl who she only showed her eyes because the rest was completely covered. And to the extent, some extent in ultra-Orthodoxy in Judaism, it's like that too. And they don't cover the face, but the hair is covered, especially for women, for married women. And the rule is, I'll teach you a song I learned at Orthodox day school growing up, which tells you the rules here for the rest. Tznius, that is our battle cry, tznius, do or die, tznius. Don't show your knees or your elbows or shoulders or thighs. So knees, shoulders, thighs, elbows. So when Orthodox women are dressed, and they only wear pants, dresses, not pants. When at the health club, the women who work out there, Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox, they do work out there, they'll wear pants under their skirts because the Torah prohibits wearing clothing of the opposite sex. And they say pants are verboten for women. But there, no slits, no wraparounds below the knee, cover the elbows, cover the shoulders, and at the neckline it has to be above where the fist goes. Now, in modern Orthodoxy, and the Orthodox too, like my Bratslav relatives in Israel, ultra-Orthodox sometimes even shave their heads, the women, under the hair, so that the hair could never be exposed. Now, we live in a community here where there's a lot of modern Orthodox women, and a lot of the parents in our Gan, they don't cover their head, except in shul. Some do, and they'll let the few hair in the front here show. And the conservative movement in shul, women who are married cover their heads, and we also, in egalitarian services, have women wear kippot if they want, because the men do, and that's out of reverence for God, not out of that the hair is an alluring subject. I want to refer you to a book written by Wendy Shalit called A Return to Modesty, Discovering the Lost Virtue in 1999, where she talks about experience of young girls and women in the modesty issue. Now, some feminists thought that this is too focused on women, and there are implications for men too. I want to stress that it's not just about dress, but we do need to talk about dress and the question that has. And to say that this is not an issue for the conservative movement, it certainly is. Camp Ramah, for example, you have hundreds and hundreds of young people there. You have swimming. We don't have separate swimming. You have the dining halls, a lot of energy. And so people have to use common sense about no bikinis and no spaghetti straps and none of those tops where there's nothing holding it up. People have to use common sense. The question to ask yourself for the issue of modesty is, am I wearing this so I can attract inappropriate attention from the opposite sex? Is it clingy and alluring and low cut and a high skirt? Or is it simply that I'm trying to look nice and presentable and modest and decent? That is the question for religious dress. Sandals, especially in Israel, is a question about whether in the Orthodox you have a dispute about stockings and bare leg and socks and no socks. And so you see in the modern Israeli community, Orthodox, they'll wear sandals with no socks, and the ultra-Orthodox, it'll be, they do it with socks. And I already explained about the hair covering. I hope that that's clear. It's really not an issue in the conservative movement as much, but it is in the Orthodox. Now, female singing voices, too. The halacha is female singing voices are verboten. There is a dispute among the authorities as to whether this applies only to singing or even talking in mixed groups where there are men present. And so I have relatives where the women will not sing, in public when Shabbat singing goes on, for example. It's called Kol Isha, the voices of a woman, and that's not an issue in the conservative movement at all. And I certainly, so especially because we have women cantors and women rabbis and women choirs and mixed choirs. Another aspect of this is touching, and the principal issue there is called Shomer Negia, where people observe the prohibition against touching somebody of the opposite sex unless it's an immediate relative, your mother, your daughter, or your wife. There are a couple concerns there. One is the woman might be menstruating, and the Orthodox believe that menstruation communicates a taboo called Tmeut, which needs to be rectified by immersion in the mikveh. And also you have the sexual concern there. I'll tell you a story that was in Israel, and I told a relative coming to visit who didn't speak any Hebrew or Yiddish that going to meet my ultra-Orthodox relatives, a female, that whatever you do, don't touch the men when you meet them. So I was in Israel, we were sitting there, and she answered the door. One of my long-bearded Bratslava relatives welcomed her in, and she grabbed him and hugged him, big hug, hello. That's not done. And that's why sometimes when you see an Orthodox rabbi, an Orthodox man, a woman will put out her hand, they won't shake it. Not out of offense, but they observe the laws of Negia. There's also a concept called yichud, where it's against Jewish law to seclude yourself alone in the room with somebody of the opposite sex. Basically, if it's a place where private, where people aren't going to come in, it doesn't impact the doctor visits and counseling sessions and stuff like that. But it's definitely a good issue. In fact, we call yichud. We usually use the term for something very beautiful at the end of a wedding. The couple has to be alone for a few minutes, called yichud, to sort of say that we're now married. In our religious services, I do have a video on do Jewish men and women have to pray separately. I don't think you have to. I think there's tremendous archaeological evidence that we borrowed that custom from the non-Jews. The Orthodox, of course, consider a requirement. Public dancing, we don't have any issue in the conservative movement about men and women dancing together. Certainly, group Jewish dancing. The Orthodox, especially the ultra-Orthodox, will not do it at all. And they also have issues about certain religious ceremonies where they have to sit separately. We don't pay attention to that at all. I think it's almost, when I started rabbinical school, we didn't have a separation barrier up, but we did sit separately, men and women. It's very uncommon today. Maybe there's a couple in Canada, conservative synagogues, which still do that. So basically, to summarize it, for non-Orthodox Jews, I think the general principles of modesty and behavior and person and dress are certainly part of the commandment structure of Judaism. To not dwell on lascivious or immoral thoughts, to avoid staring at members of the opposite sex, especially at any part of their parts that are not for public, keeping the body clothed in respectable clothing, refrain from touching people of the opposite sex in general is a good idea, especially a married person, and those are, I think, the basic principles of tzniut, of modesty. I think if you just take a second and look around at the society, it's going way, way, way in the other direction, and that's not becoming the religious personality. Shalom.